I think in the last few years, quick commerce has grown by over 230%, right? It's become this kind of lab for brands to test out new ideas, be it like flavors, formats, bundles, with Reliance kind of coming into the whole thing. And we've seen how Reliance behaves in other categories, right? In other industries. They always sort of have a pan-India sort of play, and not just in metros, in a lot of smaller towns, right?
Swiggy just launched Noise. So, what are your thoughts and perspective? Is it going to get competitive for the other brands that's existing in this platform with respect to ranking?
300%. Yeah. 300%, Shweta.
This is the Digital Shelf Insider podcast of Metriscart. I often think about how food found its way into our homes not too long ago. A weekly grocery list, a Sunday market run, a familiar Kirana store that knew our family by name. Life felt unhurried, and consumption did too. But today, the kitchen replenishes itself in minutes. We don't plan for groceries, groceries plan for us. A craving, a click, a forgotten ingredient delivered before the pan heats up. Quick commerce has rewritten how India cooks, shops, and even discovers new items. Shoppers signal what they want in real time, and brands are listening. Product ideas are tested in smaller batches across real moments of consumption. Culture guides decisions from ingredients to pack sizes to messaging. So the question becomes, in this new world of 10-minute discovery and ultra-personalized consumption, what does it take to build a brand that truly stands out? Not one that simply shows up in a cart, but one that earns a place in the consumer's life, rituals, and culture. That's exactly what we're going to explore today. Welcome to the Digital Shelf Insider podcast. I'm your host, Shrestha, and joining me is someone who helps brands to do more than compete. She helps them matter. Our guest today is Radhika Battala, founder of The Better Collective, with 2 decades of experience in New York and Mumbai, and guiding D2C disruptors and legacy FMCG giants to carve a voice no algorithm can replicate. In this conversation, we break down the future of FMCG innovation, from sachets and trial packs for new usage moments to region-based flavors inspired by Grandma's Kitchen to the silent private label rise in quick commerce. If 2026 belongs to brands that shape culture, not just follow it, then this episode is a masterclass. Hi, Radhika. How are you doing today? I'm so excited to have you here on the podcast.
Thanks so much, Rishta. It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me. And I'm excited to talk today because it's an interesting topic, a very relevant one. So, yeah, I'm excited, and take it away.
Right. So I'll ask you something real broad. So how is the rapid growth of quick commerce impacting the way FMCG brands particularly are approaching innovation and experimentation at this point?
So, first, I just want to say that, a lot of people were thinking quick commerce is just going to be like a fad that will go away. But honestly, basis what I'm seeing and what I'm reading, I think in the last few years, quick commerce has grown by over 230%, right? So it's
Yeah.
not going anywhere in a hurry.
Yeah.
There's some estimates that I've read where it says 30% of people in all urban areas in India, they use it for all of their grocery shopping as the primary source. And then those people who are like using it to, do top ups of whatever they have in the market, in the kitchen, they're using that number goes up even more, right? Obviously, Blinkit, Zepto, Swiggy, all of them, they're leading the market. But the thing is, I think now with Reliance, JioMart also kind of coming in as a new player, and they're already present in like some 1,000 cities, I believe.
Exactly.
So what's happened is that quick commerce has like evolved from a delivery channel into sort of a platform for testing and experimentation. I'll tell you what I mean by that.
Yeah.
It's become this kind of lab for brands to test out new ideas, be it like flavors, formats, bundles, and also like speed up how they innovate. So earlier, we several months of an innovation cycle for a brand to come up with something new. But now what's happening is brands can quickly launch small batches of products, see how they sell, get feedback within a few days, and then, iterate or make changes. Plus, I mean, let's not forget they also have a lot of live data, right, which helps them figure out what's really working, where the latent demand is, and also spot like trends in advance, right? I mean, and one one category that's really played out for is pet care and health supplements. Both of those industries have really exploded ever since quick commerce has been sort of an option, right? And so essentially, it's made FMCG brands just a lot more agile, and they're giving them an opportunity to sort of really test and figure out what they should launch in the market and what's really resonating with their audience.
Right. I like how you mentioned that, quick commerce platforms are sort of becoming the lab for testing the product ideas. So, if you have to elaborate the kind of trends and developments you're
Yeah.
seeing around new product development and portfolio strategy, how is
Yeah.
it like?
So, I think, Prishta, it's kind of interesting because, how we behave on quick commerce is we do a lot of there's a lot of frequent purchases, right?
Right.
Not necessarily large purchases at any given time, but you're logging on and sort of ordering things more frequently. So, brands are kind of responding to that, right? They're saying that, okay, we need to increase the average order value for every customer that orders from us. So what they're doing is they're creating these sort of hyper specific bundles now. Like, so for example, like a work from home kind of a bundle, which might have like, say, a functional drink, like some kind of a electrolyte kind of drink, a high protein snack, something for stress relief. So a brand is able to bundle all of these SKUs into one sort of very hyper relevant
Right.
that which makes perfect sense for the customer, because when they see it like that, they're like, I definitely need this now, right?
Right.
So I mean, that's one big thing, right? I think in terms of bundling and things like that. The other thing is, I mean, also platforms themselves are kind of innovating. They're pushing not just like grocery and stuff like that, but also into higher value items, right? Like gifts and even small electronics. And they basically want people to spend more, and that's more of a category expansion play, right? The other thing is brands are also doubling down on their investments in q-commerce if they are in certain categories, right? Like I mentioned earlier, pet care, health supplements, convenience meals, any kind of like, say, household products, especially like a lot of these D2C new eco-friendly household products. I think a lot these kinds of products lend themselves to q-commerce really well, and it kind of enables customers to discover new brands, uh, and also end up buying a lot more from brands than they otherwise would.
So true. So what's exactly happening at the packaging end when it comes to quick
Yeah.
commerce for FMCG brands? Because I remember one of the guests who came earlier on the show, she mentioned that, the packaging should be scan friendly, it should be shelf friendly, and it should also be convenience driven for the customer. So what are your thoughts and perspectives around
I mean,
this?
like, think about it. Now, like in quick commerce, the shelf is sort of irrelevant, right? It's now about the image card, and you just have that one image card, which sort of has to say everything that you need to say about your product and your offering, right?
Yeah.
So I think one of the things that I have seen in terms of packaging and these kinds of changes in q-commerce, I think, is that people are investing more heavily in sachet sizes, right? Particularly, I would say, for like beauty and personal care items, right? People are coming out with new variants all the time, and customers, kind of with all of the storytelling that happens on social media, all of the influencer noise, etc. When people see that, they want it right away. They don't want to wait like 3 days to
Yeah.
get it sort of in the mail. And so I think but they're also kind of hesitant to try it and pay like, say, 800 or 1,000 or up, for a new product that they've never had before. So
Exactly.
I think when beauty and personal care brands, they create these smaller sachet sizes. Earlier, it used to be, traditional FMCG companies creating sachets for affordability reasons in rural areas. But this is more about trying to drive purchase and push people up the premiumization ladder and make sure that they actually do opt for higher value SKUs in the future by trying out these sachets in the beginning. So that's what I've seen for beauty and personal care in terms of packaging. I think another innovation I would talk about is, you know, like all of your snacking brands, right? I think snacking is by itself a very category that's very lends itself to, sort of instant gratification in a big way, right? But people always have this hesitation of buying large quantities because there's a lot of guilt associated to it, because it's unhealthy or whatever the
Yeah.
case may be. And I think, as a result, a lot of single serve packets, like smaller serving sizes, a lot of brands are coming out with those specifically for customers on Q-commerce, right? Because now they know they'll come back. They know the behavior of the customer, that they're going to come back and they're going to buy frequently, but they want to make sure that they don't push them away by forcing them to buy a larger, right? And again, this again goes back to like trying out new flavors, trying out new formats, all of those kinds of things. It gives people an opportunity to try things without too much of an investment. So I think from a packaging perspective, that's how brands are responding, right? Like trying to create formats and sizes and products that are very native to Q-commerce, rather than taking something that's traditional and just trying to like stick it here. It doesn't work the same way.
For
Yeah, but
sure.
also, I mean, Shrishta, I think also, I think I mentioned previously that a lot of people are coming back to top up what they already may have in the kitchen or in the home, right? And I think that the result of that is that there's a lot of refill packs available on quick commerce, right? Because people are realizing that they may not necessarily they may not switch brands for say hand soap as an
Yeah.
example, but they are looking to top up, what they have at home, and they need it in a hurry, right? So I think
For sure.
refoods are also something that are becoming more prevalent on quick commerce.
So true. Great points, Radhika. Also, what I would like to add is like with sachets and smaller packet sizes, which you wouldn't find on retail shelves, I think brands also get to a newer segment of audience. I mean, customers who wouldn't like probably get into the premium category of products otherwise if they should see a full size.
100%. I mean, it just takes the risk out of trying something new. So it helps for product discovery, for brand discovery, for sure. It
Yeah.
helps, both from an awareness and a trial perspective. And it just makes the journey a little free of friction, right? Because
Yeah.
where a customer may hesitate in a normal situation, they're actually very easily opting for something because it's kind of low stakes, low risk. And that's
Right.
what. So yeah, it helps smaller brands, like particularly like up and coming brands. It gives them an opportunity to become visible very quickly, versus like in physical retail, it's notoriously hard to get shelf space, right? So you don't have that instant visibility. You have to have a certain amount. You have to be a large enough brand to be able to negotiate with offline retail spaces to get any kind of shelf space at all. But here with quick commerce, what's happening is a lot of smaller brands are able to get instant visibility and kind of get in front of their customers quite easily.
Right. Another thing I want to touch base is on the regional and cultural granularity. I mean, quick commerce is pan India, but north, south, every other region has its own culture, and how does that all get together?
So true. I mean, you raise such a good point, particularly as, like I said, with Reliance kind of coming into the whole thing, and we've seen how Reliance behaves in other categories, right? In other industries. They always sort of have a pan India sort of play, and not just in metros, in a lot of smaller towns, right?
Yeah.
So I think when that kind of shift is happening, where we're not just talking to Bombay, Delhi, Bangalore, then what happens is customers have very strong preferences, particularly in food, right?
Yeah.
I would say, particularly in food, there's just very strong preferences in terms of flavors, in terms of ingredients, and things like that. So, which also means that brands are now investing in coming out with smaller quantities of like very hyper local variants of their products, right? And they're able to test it and see whether that's working in that particular region, or and then figure out whether it's large enough, if the demand is large enough to kind of scale across the country. If not, then they've got like a solid portfolio for that particular region, right?
Mm.
So it makes it a lot easier for brands to pay attention and cater to that Indian preference for very hyper local sort of ingredients and flavors, your grandma's recipe when it comes to certain types of pickles, or when it comes to, to any kind of condiments, or, those kinds of things. So I think even attas and grains, and, any kind of health teas, all of these kinds of categories, I think there is a lot of cultural nuance, like from place to place. And I think Q-commerce is kind of making it easier for brands to cater to that demand without having to make a huge pan-India investment.
Right. Uh, and we also see that, there's sort of this silent boom of private labels that's happening in
Yeah.
commerce.
Yeah.
I mean, Swiggy just launched Noise. So, what are your thoughts and perspective? Is it going to get competitive for the other brands that's existing in this platform? With this, like,
300%. Yeah. 300%, Shrishta. I mean, I think this is a big one, right? Like, people in classic, in classic business strategy, right? They got, they sort of built their platform and gained customer data while still attracting revenue and getting, becoming part of the FMCG ecosystem. But now they're actually challenging all of these brands that are selling on their platform, and they're becoming a direct competitor to them. So it's not just a delivery channel, it's direct competition. And I think, as you said, Noise is such a good example because they're across so many different categories, from things like fresh paneer, right? Which is like a made daily sort of way. Or in Diwali, I saw, they were creating like besan laddus on that day, right? So really, really fresh foods that are available, which other, sort of like compare that to like a Haldiram's where you have your packed laddus in a pack of 10 or 6 or whatever, but it's not arguably as fresh as what's being available by Noise, right? So you kind of have that advantage right there. So for sure, I mean, I think this is going to really impact how, how brands have their strategy moving forward in quick commerce. And I think maybe one way to do this is also to try and find partnerships with the platform, right?
Yeah.
Where I don't think you can take away the competition aspect, but I do think that there are opportunities for brands as they're doing this whole test and learn thing. They can kind of co-create with platforms so that it's a win-win for both, right? In terms of promotions and in terms of packs and things like that. So I think, yeah, for sure, the competition is undeniable. How that's really going to play out is, I think, something that we need to kind of just see as things go. But I would say that also, I think this means that brands will have to be a bit cautious and kind of not, chase every trend without validation. And also, don't rely too much on one platform, right?
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, omni-channel has always been sort of the way to go, in my opinion, because your customer is everywhere, right? And they may not be thinking about you when they are online, or they may not be thinking about you when you're offline, and you need to be available wherever they are. So I think this is just another example of brands having to realize that an omni-channel approach is the way to go, and don't rely exclusively on quick commerce, because that's just not the situation anymore that it was even, say, 6 months ago.
Right. I'm just rephrasing whatever you shared. So, omnichannel is the way to go, and don't chase trends too hard. And I guess that's the message for brands, right?
Absolutely. I mean, you just don't want to rely too heavily on them, and you
Yeah.
do want to make sure that it still makes sense from a pack size perspective, from a inventory perspective. You do need to pay more attention to your, predicting demand, your inventory, your returns, all of those kinds of things. You need to pay more attention to now, because it's not like the customer just has no point of appeal. They have
Yeah.
very easy option to like click on the first image card that they see when they launch Instamart or something, and they'll just choose that particular because it feels easy, it feels obvious, right?
Right.
So yeah, I think brands just have to kind of be smarter about how they go about it now.
Yeah. And consumers are very informed these days.
Oh, for sure. 100%. 100%, no doubt about that.
Yeah. So we've almost come to the end of this episode, and I have one last question for you.
Sure.
We just few weeks into the new year 2026. So which quick commerce driven tactics do you believe that FMCG brands should prioritize versus those that may be a little overhyped this year, like 2025?
So I think honestly, it comes down to thinking about how your consumer is behaving on this platform, right? Like, what are their need states when they are opening up a quick commerce app? I think there is a lot of impulse, right? That's baked into the proposition of quick commerce. And so I think trying out new flavors, new formats, new recipes, new variants of your products in smaller sizes. I think that strategy or that tactic needs to continue and should continue because we're not really taking away that impulse behavior. If anything, that's going to become even more embedded, right? Because we've had our impulses be satisfied pretty well already.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is also, be very clear that you are not going to rely heavily on just one channel, and it needs to be part of a broader marketing and distribution strategy where that you can also sort of segment your portfolio, right? Where you don't need to have every single SKU that you are making available on quick commerce. There can be very selective about which ones you're actually putting onto the platform because you really want to reduce the risk of just inventory just sitting there, right? So I think being very smart about predicting the demand, about planning your inventory, I think that's going to be also very important moving forward. Because that's again a consistent part of FMCG, whether it's online, offline, everywhere, right? I think those are one of the most important aspects of whether businesses succeed or fail. So I think, so I think those are the tactics that I would recommend moving forward.
So well put, Radhika. Thank you so much for taking out the time to join us. It was a wonderful, conversation with you, and I'm sure our audience would feel the same. And brands have great lessons to learn here.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It was actually a really fun conversation, and it's exciting to see how this area develops. And thanks again for having me, Shrishta. Appreciate it.
As we wrap up, one thing stands out clear. Quick commerce isn't just about speeding up delivery. It's speeding up expectations, innovation, and culture. The FMCG playbook is evolving from mass appeal to micro realities, regional tastes, at-home occasions, tiny experiments that scale big, packaging built for impulse, trial, and discovery. And as Radhika reminded us, winning now isn't about louder campaigns. It's about sharper thinking, braver positioning, and products rooted in real human moments. In 2026 and beyond, brands that will rise aren't simply the fastest to launch, but the ones that listen deeply, build meaningfully, and earn trust in every cart, kitchen, and community. Thank you for joining us today on this episode of Digital Shelf Insider. If you enjoyed this conversation, do make sure to subscribe, share with a fellow brand builder, and stay tuned.